We're about to get started. So welcome to this webinar. My name is Mark Davis. I'm Director and Principal at the UK College Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy. I know some of you might be joining for the first time. Some of you are still deciding whether to take a training. Some of you are taking the training. Some of you are taking the training. Some of you are in practice and having a fantastic time with it. So we know lots of different people are here. Hold on, let me just get that sorted. Lots of different people here, different parts of the journey. So welcome everybody. And I'm delighted here to have Barry Bray joining us, and Barry trained with us in 2020.
Yeah, I qualified in, I think it was the end of September 2020.
Fantastic. So yeah, and switched, as we'll hear. I want to go through the whole story, so I'm not going to give it all away at the beginning, but switched from one career into another, trained, and then I think is enjoying some very interesting success in this area, and we want to hear about that. So my proposal here is, Barry, is what I want to do is spend a bit of time, maybe about 20 minutes, just on your story, choosing the training, the experience of training, what that was like for those people who are sort of doing that, and those decision points, and what made the difference and what it was like. And then that decision then to get into actually quit the job, the big one, so to speak. And so what's that like in terms of getting business started, and just a bit about the whole aspect of starting therapy and marketing your professional practice. So I might make 20 minutes on that aspect. And then really I want to spend then the rest of the time on the way you work right now, the clients you're working with. And I believe you have a case study to share. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got several lots and lots we can talk about. Lots and lots we can talk
Fantastic. About. So yeah, I want to give time so everybody gets a chance to see that the journey, the kind of switching career journey, setting up in practice, and some of the business aspects of doing a practice as well as the personal aspects of that, marketing your professional practice. And then, as we've titled this, Hypno-CBT in action, seeing this model in action, being applied in action. And I'm always excited to see that, because these people who train with us go out there and do incredible creative stuff with it, way a lot more than what I was thinking about. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. So I'm just as keen as all of you, to find out about all of that. So does that sound a good plan, Barry? What do you think?
Yeah, fantastic. I'm up for that. That sounds great, Mark.
Great. Okay, so and do pop your questions into the chat. We've also got a Q&A panel. Put them in there. I think there's a meeting summary being recorded as well, so be able to catch a meeting summary of things as well. So if you want to post things, notice if you post, it's nice if you post to everyone, unless you want to sort of make a personal comment or invite Barry or I out to dinner, in which case you can just make a host of panelists as well. So that's fine. But it's nice to kind of, otherwise I'm commenting on stuff that everyone else can't see. So welcome everybody. Let's get started. Barry, tell us, what were you in your former life? And I literally mean we're not doing past
my past life. Yeah, let's
yeah, and what's that? Yeah, what went on that made you start to shift and look, and how did you decide?
Okay, yeah, cool. So I was a teacher for 20 years. I was one of those who never knew what they wanted to do, and did a drama degree because it was really the only thing I genuinely really loved. You know, lots of things I liked to do, but nothing I loved. And I did a load of drama and stuff when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and went, oh, let's just do a drama degree. Did a drama degree, fell into teaching, which was a way, really, in truth, of just making a bit of money on the side while I was going for auditions. That was always the plan. And so I then really liked teaching and found I was actually pretty good at it. And it was, great seeing students progress. And I had a bit of a, I liked to help students that were really, 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 really struggling, and not necessarily, the kids that almost sort of were left behind a little bit some of the time. And I got the bug, and then, teaching changed over a long period of time as I got more ambitious and wanted to, saw other people in positions that I thought I could do better in all honesty. And that was really the only reason I started getting promoted, because I thought, oh, I can do that job. Try it. Okay, I'm pretty good at that. I can do that job. And I ended up moving to Bath, which is where I am now. So I've had my practice in Bath. Moved to SLT in 2013 and became an assistant head in charge of sixth form in one of the schools in Bristol. And that was really cool. So that was lovely and awesome and wonderful and amazing. And then I, again, just circumstances really, that it was the beginning of trusts, educational trusts, and the school I joined happened to be forming a trust and was at the very forefront. So they wanted to create a sixth form across the whole trust, and I was sort of initially drafted in just for chats, and that became leading it, and then that became running it, implementing it. And I was on that trajectory of going up, do I want to become a head teacher and all that sort of thing. And I was getting more and more tired and more stressed and enjoying it less and less, in truth. And about 2017 or so, I was running the sixth form across, and I just wasn't enjoying it at all. And it was the politics of it I wasn't really enjoying. And I was thinking, is this the career I want? What's the next 10, 15 years of my life going to look like? And is that going to be enjoyable? And I realized again, I was just spending less and less time with my children, less time with my wife, less time doing the things that I want to do. And you become to that point of, what am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? And so I knew in 2017 I was going to leave, and I was looking around for things. I really wasn't sure what to do. I've got a couple of kids, got a mortgage, my wife's got a business. And so what do I do? What do I do? I know I don't really want to teach anymore. What do I do? And I was looking around. I was good at the pastoral stuff. It was the stuff I was really interested in, working with kids and helping them progress and stuff. And I was looking to therapies and came across UK College in my research. I think it was 2019. It would have been something like that.
You must have been searching for hypnosis or hypnotherapy. We're not going to come up to.
Oh no, I really wasn't. See, this is really interesting because I was always interested in hypnotherapy and like really stereotypically, Darren Brown, Paul McKenna, all that sort of stuff. But I wasn't really aware of how evidence-based it was. And so it was only when I came across the UK College and I started looking into it, I went on one of your webinars and I was just reading the evidence behind it. I'm a bit of a researcher, which is not surprising what I'm doing now as well as part of my work. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized, hang on, there's something really cool in this and something really interesting in this and something that really intriguing. And then when you combine it with the cognitive behavioral, which I did know about through my pastoral work as a teacher, as a member of SLT and leading that sort of stuff, I was like, okay, this is really interesting. Then I saw that it was BPS accredited, and I'm like, okay, that's got to be pretty meaningful, And so I just decided, I looked at it all, and you're looking on balance. I wanted to go into something whereby I wouldn't spend years and years and years and years training. I didn't have that luxury, mortgage, as I was saying before, children in school, all that stuff. So I needed something that I could qualify in relatively quickly, but that was evidence-based, that I would be happy to put my name behind, and that's really important to me, that I'm not a very woo-woo person. I never really have been. I think there's a place for woo-woo, and it's a very interesting concept anyway. Lots more about that. But I wanted something that was really evidence-based. That was the real key. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that this was a very good possibility. I could qualify relatively quickly, do stuff, and I realized at the time it would be, more limited, low-level stuff. And I was fine with that. I just wanted to learn and see if it was appropriate for me as well. So I had all that in the back of my mind, and then I decided, right, it was beginning of 2020, so I don't know, end of January, something like that. And I was like, I'm gonna put my notice in, and that was really scary. And then I put my notice in and had signed up for the courses.
So you handed your notice in before you signed up.
Yeah. I knew I was going to do it. It was it's one of those things, it's a trade-off. My health and wellness and all the rest of it was just more important than the career in that respect, if that makes sense. I made that decision. My wife was brilliant about it, because I needed the buy-in of the people I love, my wife, my kids, and all the rest of it. And we talked about it a lot. But it was important that that came first. So I did that, took the plunge. And then, of course, COVID happened 5 weeks later, I think it was, after putting my notice in. It's like, oh my goodness me, what's going on? What's going to happen with the course? It was supposed to be in class and and it switched to webcast. So it worked out really quite well. The webcast was awesome. I got to meet you and Shelley and Sue and everyone, and lots of lovely people on the course. and fortunately for me, found it incredibly interesting and way more than I thought it was going to be. I think that's the really excuse me, the real big thing for me was that I was on the course. You sign up for it, and then I remember getting the manual, the manual, and I was like, bloody hell, that's quite a lot. And then I realized that was just the first stage manual, and you're like, okay, that's like 220 whatever it is pages of proper material, and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And that really appeals to me. I love reading and researching and stuff like that. And then on the course again, you're doing really intensive work on first stage hypnotherapy and really getting to underneath it and what it is and how it works and what it does and what it isn't as well, as important as anything else. Misconceptions and how you could use it within therapy, understanding that hypnotherapy is not actually a therapy. Hypnosis is a tool to be used in therapy. It's something you can use to access and put in the cognitive behavioral approach onto that. Again, really important and really interesting. The stage 2 and stage 3, so much material in there. It was crazy. And I've said to lots of people since, it probably took me, in all honesty, about a year after I qualified to really get to grips with everything, because there's so much material in the course, and it's so interlinked in so many different ways across hypnotherapy, cognitive behavior, etc., that it takes a long time to let it sink, to learn, let it sink in, practice, use it, play with it, understand why it doesn't go as you want it to sometimes, why it goes much better than you think it ever will sometimes. You're like, okay, have faith in it, build confidence in it, and so I did that. I think it was from, when was it, April, May, something like that, to set, and qualified in late September of 2020, having done.
But before we go there, I just want to find out, what was your favorite part of the course? What was the favorite kind of day or content? Or
I tell you what, the thing that really, one of the moments that I really thought, my goodness me, there's something in this, was when we did, I think it was day 2, leaves on a stream. So I was really I'd read it, okay, and I was really cynical about it. I was like, really, is this really going to have the impact? And we did it. I remember opening my eyes and just going, oh my goodness, this works. This really does work. That's really interesting. And it was one of those things where,
describe to people leaves on the stream a little bit before you then.
So leaves on the stream, really simple, really very effective exercise, where essentially you close your eyes, you imagine you're by this body of water, this stream that's by you, sort of rolling by, and then leaves fall from the sky. You allow a couple of leaves to drift off and go, and to let them go, literally just to let them go off into the distance, and then they come down again, and you put some thoughts on it, or a thought on it, I should say. And you let the thought land on the leaf, and you look at it, and you can do what you want with it, really. You just understand that it's just a thought. That's all it is. It's just a thought. There's no need to be emotionally involved with that thought, or to be worried about it or scared about it. It's just a thought, and then you let that go, going off down the stream. And it's that whole thing of just recognizing thoughts are thoughts. Thoughts are we put the emotional value on a thought. Thought itself is not really anything. We put the emotional value on the thought, and that's what causes the stress or the worry or whatever. And I was doing the exercise, and I struggle. On a personal level, when I do any exercise, I struggle to visualize. So some of my clients get like picture perfect, like a photograph, and they can see it, and talked about it afterwards, like, yeah, it was every single detail. But I kind of get impressions, almost like flitting bits. I struggle to get a picture, but I have my eyes, and it's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I feel amazing. That works. Of course it does. And it was actually a really great early lesson, although I didn't realize it at the time, in this idea that there's no sort of one way to do these things. People are going to have different experiences using the same exercise or technique, and it's fine. So although I only had impressions of it, it felt fabulous afterwards. I really did. And it was at that point I was like, okay, so there is clearly something within all this on a deeper level than I've ever been before. I'd never up to that point had any experience of therapy in that way, of learning about therapy, of knowing about it, or techniques or exercises to do that. I didn't even know about breath work. I'd never done any of that. And so it was really so it was a real eye opener. And I come into almost everything I do with, I wouldn't say cynical because that's probably a bit too strong, but I come in questioning things, everything, no matter what it is, and I don't blindly accept things, and so when I come in with that and I know it's working, I was like, yeah, that's great. There's something in that, and then you go through the course, you do loads of the exercises. Time projection was another one when we did that one, and there's no coincidence that I use these with a lot of clients who like it, and I use time projection or the movie camera of awareness with lots of clients. I love that one. This idea of the two paths, and really sort of beforehand going through and detailing what those paths might look like. The sounds, colors, the options, the futures, the potential ways. And I remember doing that one as well. And I was did quite a personal thing with that at that time. With two young children are really stressful. As gorgeous and wonderful as they can be incredibly stressful. And so I was doing, I did a thing where I was doing with my eldest, who was being particularly difficult, as kids do. And I used it with that. And again, I was just like, oh, God, that's great. Looking at the different options and making decisions about how I wanted to be and how I wanted to, as a father, what to do and how I wanted to
seeing the long-term picture.
Yeah, totally. And that really was another moment where I was just like, okay, yeah, that's great. And I guess one of the things I thought, when I signed up for the course, I was thinking, right, I am going to learn how to become a therapist, how to help people. What I didn't and genuinely didn't realize was just how much it was going to help me, just by not only just by exploring them in the first place and understanding them and all the rest of it, but it really did totally change the way I did things and do things. So out of this come my morning routines, which I've refined over time. But it's that whole stress prevention thing. How do you deal with stress or anxiety or life or anything? Well, you can either get stressed and deal with it at the time, or you can do things that will enable you to better deal with that stress when it comes. Stress prevention. So out of that came my morning routines, which focused a bit about very light exercise and light and breath work and a bit of self-hypnosis and all that sort of stuff to really set me up for the day, and not just that day, but
a morning routine like that. When was that?
And I'd never done it before. Never done it before.
When did you develop that? Was that during the course, afterwards?
That was a bit during the course. So that would have been sort of August, September. So towards the middle of stage 3. So I was still learning, still doing these things. And I was doing a lot of other research around it. I kind of go a bit all in with these sorts of things and go, okay, I really need to understand CBT. I really need to understand hypnosis. I really need to understand these exercises and just playing around with it. And it was lockdown as well. So everyone has a bit more time. Everyone's time is a bit unstructured because problems working and socializing and everything. So it was an ideal time to try it out. And I started off just doing self-hypnosis every day, every morning. Well, five mornings a week as it was, which is kind of what I still do now. And from that developed my routines, and it's all about, for me, it is about, I say prevention. I think it's probably a strong word because you don't prevent stress in that way. You just kind of manage it better. You understand, you have a better perspective. You're much more easy to reframe stuff. You can then do all the sort of physiological work about keeping relaxed and relaxation and developing the relaxation response as more of an automatic response rather than as I've got to invoke it by doing something. So what I found over time, very, very quickly, there were 2 or 3 months, I was just, having gone from a good wage to 0 wage, trying to set up a business, trying to learn all this stuff, trying to get through a difficult time with COVID anyway. It was an incredibly stressful time for not just me, but everyone, and it really helped me give me structure and understanding of myself around that. So And I've kept it now, so I still do it every single morning, 5 mornings a week, sometimes six, depending upon the weekend. But I do 5 mornings a week. I get up at 6 a.m., which is now before everybody else. So I get up because I know I don't do it otherwise when the kids are up and my wife's working and all that stuff. So I get up an hour before everyone else at 6. And then, which I didn't do. Well, I did that for work, but not in that respect. And then, yeah, I get up, I do get light on, I'll get some air outside, get some water. I do a 20 minute yoga, stretchy yoga, as I call it, stretchy yoga. Help my back as I get older. And I do some breath work and I do some self-hypnosis. I might read for 10 minutes or something, or something like that. I might look at my diary depending upon what, how busy the day is likely to be. I love it. I absolutely love it. I say it's just one of those things that I will continue to develop. As my needs change and all the rest of it, it will continue to evolve and change. And I'm always trying different things. But it has, without question, is on a personal basis just good for me to set my day up, and get me awake and feeling like I can tackle the day in a nice sort of active way. And
I feeling on top of the day instead of the day on top of you.
100%, 100%. I go in today in a nice positive mood, nice and fully awake. My kids will not for the first 20 minutes be like that at all. They'll be grumpy and trying to wake up and all the rest of it. And it gives me a start to the day that, God, I look at myself now and I'd have laughed at myself, 10, sort of 5 or 6 years ago when I was a teacher. The thought of doing this would have just been like, what on earth? But when you learn about stress, when you learn about therapy, you learn about life, and actually when you reassess what's important to you in life, which I think is a part of it as well, a big part of it, you realize that these things are incredibly important. Your physical and mental health, in a whole variety of ways, need to take priority, and you can do that. And I teach this with my clients a lot. People with incredibly busy lives, etc. We find ways of incorporating new habits for them, or playing with old ones that have maybe gone a bit maladaptive or whatever, or been dropped. And you can do it with almost any. I haven't had a client yet where I haven't been able to introduce some really good habit changes to enable them to tackle the day, the week, the month, the year in a much more proactive, healthier way for them.
But that you came to that, taking the course, you saw the impact of doing that for yourself. And I think that's something really worth exploring. And that's obviously then impacted how you work with clients. Coming back, people might not know, but when we do the course, the leaves on the stream exercise, for example, which is observing your thoughts, kind of witnessing your thoughts exercise. That's something that we repeat as a group at the start of every day on stage 1. And then in stage 2, there's another exercise that we do, which is tension release. So that aspect of the way in which the course has got that, we're not just teaching you it once, but we actually took you through and repeated it as if you're a client doing it.
Yeah.
Do you think that had an impact in terms of your development and use of it, and integration of it in your life and use with clients?
100%. Theory is all well and good, but without practice, without action, it's just theory. It's like, I don't know, if you read all the books in the world, self-help books in the world, you've got a lot of knowledge. But if you then don't do anything with that knowledge, it's just knowledge for knowledge's sake. So practicing exercises is really, really important. And going through, again, when I take people through the course, etc., it's that whole thing of under, if you can experience, both as a client and as a volunteer, a therapist and a volunteer, each of these exercises, you just have a fundamentally different understanding than you do if it's just theory. If you've gone through it, you know what it feels like for yourself.
Yeah.
It may not be what you feel like.
Repeat. The ones we're not just doing intervention in a session, but the ones we want them to introduce as a daily practice. And
absolutely. And there's something about that whole lived experience. There's lots of different ways of lived experience, within your job and all the rest of it. Why do some people go into the niche they do? Because they've got lived experience of a particular issue and stuff. But when you have the experience of it, it changes your relationship with the therapy itself, I think. And also it means that you come from a slightly different place of knowledge with the client. It may not be identical, and that's not important. It's just this idea of, I kind of, I'm expecting you to do something, and we're asking you to do something. I've done it myself. This is kind, so I like that as kind of a principle by which I work by as well. If I'm expecting you to do something or whatever, then I should be able to do that as well, or at least give it a go.
You talk, you're authentic with it. You have genuine
Yeah.
insight around the struggles with it, because you haven't just done it once in a training and thought, oh, that sounds a good idea to do with the client. It's a live thing for you. I think it's so important. We have discussed at different points as kind of, in terms of as trainers, having sort of journals, so that when people they have to actually submit their journal of self-hypnosis, of this type of meditation exercise, that type of meditation exercise. And I'm not sure if we've really formally introduced that yet, but just as a tutor on the course with me, just reflect on that. Do you think that would be a useful thing to be doing?
Yeah, I think it's a very personal thing. I think it's a really good idea to do it, right? Some of my biggest wins and insights have been when I've asked clients to do thought forms or variations of them. Come to me and say, I'm really stressed. Okay, well, do a thought form over the first week or two. Let's find out what you're stressed about, when you're stressed, how you're stressed, and see if what you're telling me is accurate. So when you reflect, you get, again, a different level of understanding of what you're going through. And I think that's right. When the course is big and there's so much in there. People come from, like me, no experience of therapy at all, to some people who will have experiences of other therapies or done whatever. I think when you reflect, it gives you that time to take it in and really think about it, rather than just be a passive recipient of knowledge. You can actually go in and think about it. Come back to what I said before about being that sort of critical eye, if you like. What is it? What does it mean to me? What do I like? Because it comes back. I remember you talking about, back in when I did the course, it's like we've all got different experiences of these things. What will an exercise that will work for me might not work for you in the same way, or might work better or not quite so well. So rather than just know that, why don't you actually try and reflect on that and do that and find out what works? And it's the same. I think it's a useful process as well for when you're working with clients, because we all go, okay, if that exercise worked for me, I'm going to do that with you, but that might not be appropriate for that client. And so that's, again, another chance to reflect on that. If there's lots of different ways to cut the stress cake, as they say, to deal with anxiety, etc. And you see a lot online, actually, like anything. Oh, I've built my business this way, so this is what you need to do. Well, there's just different circumstances, different environmental, social, etc. circumstances. So again, when you have some exercises or some thought, you look at ACT within the course, or you look at whatever, when you really reflect on it and go, okay, so how did I respond to that? What does it mean to me? How might I use that? Who might this be appropriate for? You build up this sort of knowledge. So when I come off the course, I've got I organize my folders. So there's a lot of material. How do I organize it? And I just put it into the different areas. I'm going to read it here because I've actually got it up here. Look. Where do we go? ACTE, anxiety, assertiveness, breathing, burnout, confidence, convinces and inductions, coping skills, depression, blah, 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 blah. So I then put each of the things in there. So I've kind of got a built like a little way to do it, if that makes sense. So I was going through all the exercises. Where might that be appropriate? In what 2, 3, 4, one area, whatever. And then where I wasn't sure if there was, so there's some that I didn't respond to as well, like thought stopping. I'm gonna be fully open. I'm not a massive fan of thought stopping. It wasn't brilliant for me. However, I have used it with clients and it has worked for them. I don't use it with every client, far from it, but I do think about what does that client need and what would be appropriate for them. So when you've got it all the information sort of organized, and you've thought about that, and you continue to think about that as you get more experience as a therapist, and with clients, or you're doing it with supervision or with groups, etc., you can really build up that sort of the skill set and how you can help people.
Let me ask you about that process there of organizing that, because some people, we were going to do it, and somebody had said, what you need to do is organize this all into toolkits. And we started to do that social anxiety toolkit, phobia toolkit, and it was very nicely packaged up. And it's still a process we want to do. at the same time, part of me was like, yes, but I think there's something in your own development when you've got to organize the material and think, how am I going to use this? There's something there where you're going to encode that much more deeply. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah,
You're a teacher, so tell me what
yeah. Yeah, you
educational professional.
take information and put it in your own way, in your own words, in your own spin. It's like taking notes. Your teacher talks. This is how I used to work. This is my schooling was. The teacher would talk. We would write down what he would say, word for word, literally. You'd be tested on it, and it was awful. I hated it. Absolutely not for me whatsoever. But when you take these ideas, whether from the course or one of the like the CBHI as we called it, or the Meichenbaum course, which by the way is amazing. I'm really enjoying that. Oh yeah, he's great. He is great.
Off the planet, yeah, really.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really enjoying that. But when you do that and you take it and make your own notes, and I'm a prolific note taker, I actually, because my handwriting is so bad, I use Word documents and stuff like that because it's much easier for me to do. But when you put it in your own words, in your own way, there's another level of understanding that it gives you. And again, it's about being active and not being passive, just like with therapy is. Hypnosis is your active state. You are actively imagining, actively responding, actively choosing. And so you kind of when you do that, it becomes a lot easier. Is it more effort? Yes. Is that effort worth it? Only you can tell, but I would say yes. When you personalize it. And it's like with scripts, isn't it? So we have the scripts and we do the scripts as they are. But they're not necessarily how you talk or your personality or the client's personality, more important, the client's language. And so you take them this is how I did it anyway. I took them after the course and I rewrote them all. I didn't rewrite them all in one block because there was so many of them. But as I was using them, as clients were coming up, I would take them and rewrite them. And I've got, I don't know how many versions of each, probably 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, depending upon the client, because I'm using their language. I'm thinking, well, what's their background? How do they respond to things? What's the things we've tried before? Does that work? Okay, I might need to reframe that, rephrase that, whatever. And so just the act of doing that over time as well teaches you so much about delivery.
Yeah, you're doing a lovely little short workshop just on showing some different standard scripts. You adapt and change it because people, I know for some people that's going to feel like a mysterious process. Once they actually start to see that, then they can see themselves doing it as well. Imagine yourself doing it, see yourself doing it. So, I mean, God, there's so many questions I want to. One thing I want to ask, just as an educational professional, somebody said to us, I love that you're using this spiral learning, and I was like, what's that? And they said, well, because you teach everything nearly on the first day, kind of, and then you keep spiraling around, and we keep looking at it from a higher, slightly more complex, but it's still the same thing. And I found a great thread on Twitter actually from an educational professional who was explaining in terms of short-term and long-term memory. And basically, and you're loading this stuff into short-term working memory here. Then and then you're re-accessing it's going into long-term memory, but then you're accessing that nugget as you spiral around. And now that's can become a consolidated piece of information that you can draw up, and you can hold more of this consolidated nuggets in your working memory. Does that make?
It does. It's that principle. So in education called interleaved learning. So whereby how do you revise or how do you learn something? If let's say you've got 5 hours over a week to learn something, you do 5 hours of whatever it is on the Monday. Well, by the Friday you've forgotten half of it. But if you chuck that 5 hours across the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you do whatever the 15, 20 minutes each day, whatever in each of the subjects. By the time you get to Wednesday and you've revisited a bit of Tuesday and a bit of Monday and then Thursday, but you learn much more effectively. Yeah. So you introduce things, go back, introduce things, go back, introduce things, go back, and and your memory, it's just much easier to revise. You chunk it into smaller pieces, and there's in education as well. There's a lot of things about learning different things. So you would learn, I don't know. You might do 3 subjects on one day for 30 minutes each, looking at Pomodoro and all the rest of it, technique. And you might do, I don't know, maths on one day, English, maths followed by English, followed by art, or whatever, 3 different disciplines effectively. And then you sort of do it over the week. You sort of timetable it over the week, and then you're learning 3 things instead of 1. You're learning in bit by bit. You're revisiting stuff, revisiting skills, revisiting knowledge, and by the time you get to the Friday, or hopefully the Monday, the following Monday, you remember so much more of it.
Gone in, yeah. So anyway, lovely to hear you reflect on that there and give that different language as well. A couple more things about the course. I mean, I think just I wanted to pick up something here very quickly for everybody, because it's a question that goes around about visual imagery with leads on the stream. Your indication there is your image is pretty patchy, maybe not quite aphantasia, and it's interesting. Mine too is as well. And personally, I think we're just honest. I think most people's visual imagery is actually a lot more. And what came across though was that actually the quality of imagery didn't matter, really.
No,
So, right.
Not in any way, shape or form. I'm teaching myself to stay with it as part of it and not worry. It's not, don't worry that I can't see, I don't know, whatever it is, the color of the water particularly, or the surroundings or whatever they are, right? It does not matter. What am I learning in that exercise? What's the purpose of the exercise? The purpose of the exercise is not to try and have a photographic image. The purpose is to learn a technique, learn a skill, how I can let thoughts go, how I can not put an emotional value on a particular thought I'm really struggling with. And then you learn to stay with that and learn that technique. So you're focusing on what you're taking from it, not on, what it's not giving you, if you like, in that respect. What am I taking from it? I am learning that when that thought goes off down the stream and I'm able to remain calm and all the rest of it in between, that's what I'm learning. So then I can apply that in my real life. When that thought comes in or that particular stressful situation comes in, I can just learn to let that go as well. That can just go through me, and so I agree. Yeah, I don't think I have aphantasia, but I do agree with you. I think most people are a little bit dishonest about how that's partly people pleasing and partly wanting it to be that way. But it doesn't really matter. And it's like with all these exercises, as long as you preface it with, there is no right way or wrong way to do this. This is your experience. This is your time. So let's just focus on what we're trying to get out of it. And then when you do a debrief at the end of it, and you can find those things out, how was it for you? What were the thoughts that you put on? What did you think about them when they had gone? How do you feel about them now? If you practice this, how do you think you might feel in a day, a week, a month? Okay, cool. Then you've got progress. You've got people going, again, actively being critically evaluating what they've gone through without the worry of it. And then when you can get that bit of progress on an exercise quite quickly, whatever that may be, the chances of them actually practicing it and doing it again are higher. And then you've got some potentially new habit building, some new skills building in there. But it's reassuring people that there's no right way of doing it. Really important. Build self-efficacy. Get the belief that they can get out of it what they need to get out of it. And when you have that, self-efficacy is huge in therapy. If I believe I can do it, I'm much more likely to get the benefit of it. I'm much more likely to try it. I'm much more likely to be more forgiving of myself if I don't quite get it or whatever, or I'm not quite sure about it. And builds a therapeutic alliance. You're giving them, that confidence and that hope and all the rest of it. And so, yeah, I think teaching people, again, with these exercises, teaching people just to have curiosity around it and just to play with it and have fun with it. There's no reason why you can't smile in therapy. There's no reason why you can't have treat it as just something whereby I can learn from this and I can get better from this, and that's cool. And it might take a week or 2 weeks, it might take a month or 2 months, it might take 5, 6, but I'll get there, and that's fine. My journey.
And the learning can be fun.
Totally.
Essential.
Totally. Yeah.
Now, let's just ask about self-hypnosis a bit before we move forward. Sometimes, and I think I love what Christopher Green had written about it being basically, it shines a light on that self-narrative. It shows us our self-narrative, shines a light on it, encourages us into this more helpful self-narrative, the way we talk to ourselves, the thoughts that come up and how we deal with them. So to me, I think an exploration of doing self-hypnosis becomes, sometimes said, like a kind of a full therapy in its own right.
Yeah.
I just want you to reflect on. Can you reflect on that, and what?
Yeah.
With doing self-hypnosis, how you talk to yourself, and do you listen to a recording, or do you just say a few things? Do you record yourself, or what?
when I first did it, I did use a recording. So I used Audacity because it's a free online tool. I still use it today. It's really I'm not a techie person. I need simplicity. Audacity is great. And I was using it to just to experiment with it at first, play around with it, and I did 2 or 3 recordings and was just like, okay, let's do this. And then I honestly I got a bit bored of listening to myself, and so I just took the techniques. How would I? It comes up when I'm teaching the diploma and stuff. How do you do self-hypnosis? And it's once you've learned it, it's actually really simple, I think. When you're dealing, I teach all my clients self-hypnosis in that way, and it's very, very simple. We have the experience of it with me doing it, talk it through. Then I get them to practice on the recording, and then we'll do it in. I'll ask them to do an induction, for example, of their choice. Well, we've got 2 or 3. Which one do you want to do? Okay, we'll go through it. Let's do it. Nod your head when you're ready, and I might do the deepener and suggestion, and then we just expand that. And so I did that with myself. I just took all these elements of them, and the induction, deepener, etc., and then just was thinking. I got to the point where I was thinking, okay, so what am I doing it for? I'm doing self-hypnosis. Brilliant. What's my aim with it? What's going to be my aim with it? Do I pick something for the day that I'm trying to work through? Do I pick something for my life that I want? I didn't know at first. I didn't know. I've got to a point where I just think about my day. Okay, so what do I want my day to be like? Okay, so I've got, I don't know, let's say I've got 4 client meetings that I've got to do some university work, and I don't know, I've got to pick my kids up or whatever it may be, right? Okay, so what do I want that to feel like? And so I'll come up with a self-hypnosis routine in the moment, which is just based around that and saying everything's going to be fine. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be lovely. And I'll do a visualization as part of that, of just that going nicely. Nothing major, nothing particularly detailed because I can't picture it properly. But just using that
So,
how do I want it to go? What's the phrases I'm going to use for myself that is most effective for that? So I do it for the day. I think when you do it for you can do it for a goal in a month or whatever it may be, but for me, I like it to be immediate. And so when you do that, you're building up each time you do that. You're building up this, like you say, self-talk, this positive, unconditional positive regard for yourself, and all the rest of it. I'm building up this nice, positive way to run my day, to live my day, to expect from my day. And I'm doing that first thing in the morning as well. And so therefore, it's okay. It's okay. And then when you combine that with the other things that you do, and just the attitude of so what, I love that. I think that was one of the things I learned from the course from you, was just so what, so what. When you do that, there's something that just clicks in your brain. And when the difficulties come, inevitable difficulties come, because they always are every single day, you're just able to deal with them better. Not that I deal with them brilliantly every time, of course not. I still get annoyed and frustrated and irritated. Anyone who has children will probably understand that as well. But it's so much easier to deal with it in the moment and isn't in the longer term. So self-hypnosis for me is about tackling the day in the right way, getting my brain in the right place, talking to myself in a nice way, and keeping it realistic as well, I think, is the other thing. I'm not going to take over the world today or whatever, but that's enough for me. And I think with self-hypnosis, again, it's a personal thing. There's no right way or wrong way of approaching that. You just need to do what you feel is right for you in that moment. So if you are particularly stressed about something, and that something is happening every single day, whatever it may be, then it may be that your self-hypnosis, self-talk just focuses around that one thing, and it may be repeated until you get somewhere with it. But that may not be your need in that particular day. Maybe you have that, and something even more stressful is going to come up on a Friday afternoon or whatever.
but it sounds like you're not. I mean, there's an aspect about rehearsing the day going well, but really, what you're really rehearsing is the way you cope with things.
Yes, 100%.
Whether they go really well or so, or like, oh shit. And that so what, that reserve attitude in a way of kind of so what if it didn't go over the way at all that you wanted. I like that idea of sort of that reserve.
Yeah.
It's the head that you go, oh, okay, so what? And then nothing becomes a drama.
Yeah, and I think and again initially as well. So I've never been like particularly shy, but I've never been the most confident person. When I became a teacher, that definitely helped. And I was SLT, that definitely helped.
Actor, a shy actor? Are the shy
I
actors?
was an actor. Yeah. Oh, believe me. Yeah. Very much so.
Very innovative group.
Yeah. And then, but then when I started to do therapy again, I had so much imposter syndrome. Who am I? Who am I to do this? What do I think I am? Blah 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 blah. And I had that. But, I've gone from, being the person that everyone came to in school to person no one comes to because I don't know anything compared to other people. And so I did self-hypnosis around that as well to just speak to myself kindly, remind myself that I'm learning. Even when I'm with clients, I'm learning about me, I'm learning about them, I'm learning about therapy. And that was really, really helpful, like really, really helpful. And I got over, it's one of those things, I think it took me 5 or 6 sessions with clients, with real living, breathing, paying clients, for me to really start thinking, I can do this. Okay, I've got this. I know what I'm doing. And it sort of comes out into everything, even when you're doing something which you've not, again, as you go through, you deal with lots of different comorbidities and all these sorts of things. None of those phase me at all. Whereas at the beginning, I was like, who do I think I am? Who do I think I am? And that, again, that role of self-talk, because, at that point, I'd not even done it. Who do I think I am? Well, I've not done it. I don't know if it goes well or badly because that's later today or tomorrow or it's Friday or whatever. I haven't got a clue. So I can stop second guessing myself and just get on with it and do it, and teach myself that that's okay.
So you could do a little guided hypnosis, or you could write a little script afterwards, maybe for novice hypnotherapists overcoming imposter syndrome.
Maybe, yeah, I could do that.
Well, it sounds like I love that how you worked with that there and how you acknowledged it was going on and saw it and then said, yeah, but
Yeah.
our little ego set ourselves up holes to fall into, right, so to speak.
Yeah, totally. And again, it's something I use as well. So after I did the course, I did a master's, and I'm now an associate lecturer in psychology at Wolverhampton, and I'm a dissertation supervisor. I'm just about to start that role. And so again, when I started that role, I was a bit like, oh my goodness me, what am I doing? This is a really high level. Am I good enough? Blah, blah, blah. And it's the same sorts of things that I do myself. So it's, whether I'm confident or not is kind of irrelevant to me. It's what I'm going to do about it that's most important. You can feel the most unconfident person in the world in anything, but you can do it. It's just a matter of speaking to yourself in that right way, forgiving yourself, understanding that you're learning, taking the highs and the lows with equal regard, and always striving to learn. And I do think that's something I do really, really well, is that I'm always looking and researching. I'm always self-reflecting. I'm always asking the question, could I have done that better? What do I not know about this client? Is there stuff I need to go and research and look at myself? Why is this not working in the way I was hoping it to? And so all that's kind of self-reflection and constant improvement. I'm really good at. That's my bag.
So you're not the finished article yet, Barry.
Far from it. I think you've got about 50.
Let's reflect on that. Do you think that's a trap that people fall into, in terms of feeling they have to be a finished article, feeling like imposters if they're not the finished article, being critical of themselves, avoiding setting up because they don't feel they're the finished article? Is that one of the biggest obstacles you think people have in it, as opposed to what?
Yeah.
Mindset that you're showing there of being like, hey, I'm still learning.
Yeah, I think so. You get a qualification, you think I should know everything. Well, you don't. You've got a qualification and you know a lot. You know a lot more than 99% of the world. But there's always more to learn. Look at any research papers in psychology, and it's constant doubt, constant trying to search for truth, constant trying to figure out this, that, and the other. And it's okay to say, I don't know. It is perfectly fine. It's much better if you say I don't know and then try and find out, what the answer is, or a way to finding the answer, towards finding the answer. And I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think when you first qualify and when you set up, just do it. Just do it. Be open and honest with people. When I was my first few clients, I was my first two, three, four, five, maybe. I was open with them and just went. My first one said, "You're my first client," and they were like, "Okay, cool." A second one, second client, okay, that's all cool. You do that, and people appreciate the honesty for a start, actually. And then you realize, and there is the thing in those first exercises when you go, you have faith in the process. We know that they work to various different levels with different people. Again, we talk about that. But having a bit of confidence that they're going to work with someone who's paying you is an interesting jump. But when you get those first two or three successes, it really builds. And then you realize, yeah, I do know what I'm doing. I can deliver this. I do understand the theory behind this. And so therefore I can explain it to the client and what we might be going through, etc.
So those two aspects now, as we talk about this aspect of kind of getting in, seeing your first few clients, the one, getting really solid on the theory, kind of how it works, but also the practice of having done it a little bit more. And because maybe I say to people, you take the course, maybe you got paired with somebody, maybe you got paired with Barry and he was having a bad day and the exercise didn't work or whatever, and you don't feel confident about that. You need to come back and revisit it and practice it. But then this second aspect there, so one, being solid with that, or relatively solid enough. And the second aspect being open and just saying, hey, you're my first client. And
it's an interesting admission because we don't want to, our instinct isn't to do that. Again, you look at all the stuff online and everyone bigging themselves up and blah, 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 and I've got to be like that. I've got to be like that. The comparison, as they say, the thief of joy. And it's true. I think when you do it for any therapist, you just go in with that open curiosity and that openness, and just if you're open with the client will be open with you. We know that's an essential part of therapy of all kinds. When you're open with the client and they are open with you, and you're honest with the client, they're honest with you, it makes everything so much easier and so much nicer. And people understand. And if they don't, they've always got the right to say, okay, I think I need to try somebody else who's a bit more experienced. Okay, fine, off you go. That's perfectly fine. Or I'll help you find that. That's fine. And that's the thing, help people find it. It comes within sphere of competence, especially when you're setting up, etc. Not everybody is going to be within your sphere of competence, or they'll have comorbidities that you're not sure about, you don't have enough experience with, etc. That's fine. Just be open with it. Just say, okay, I'm not sure about this. And people are very, very forgiving, and it's better to be open with that than worry about it and we're going to get found out and all the rest of it. So I think,
or as the Turkish saying, say, sleep on the floor and you can't fall out of bed.
Yeah, that's true. That is actually physically true. Although you could roll off it, but hey. Yeah. So when you're setting up your practice, and I know it from mine. So I did a thing whereby I qualified in, I think it was the end of September, and I did a month and a half of practice with some volunteers, but also setting up things like my website, etc. So I didn't go straight into creating the business immediately because I didn't feel ready for that, and I wanted to get the other bits and bobs and I wanted to have more time to practice what I'd learned, and I think that was a really good thing for me. So it was painful. So fiscally, money, I wasn't earning any money at that point. That was a tough decision, but it was for me the right one to do. It gave me a bit of space after doing the course, which was really intense, and doing all the essays and the case studies, and it gave me time to really think about the website. Because again, when you're setting your own business up, I've never done a website before, couldn't afford anyone to do it for me, so I taught myself how to do it. I had a friend who knew a bit about it, sat down with me and did a load of research, and it gave me a bit of space to go, okay, what kind of things do I want to do? Where are my interests? How can I practice and get better? And took a pressure off a little bit. And then, so I think it was December the 2nd or something that I officially went live with everything and took my first clients. And that was, I think, a nice little breathing space. Because again, we have this pressure of do. And I think sometimes it's difficult, if you give up a career where you're earning and you come into this where you're practicing and not earning, then that's another different kind of pressure itself. That is hard. And I'm not saying that's easy, and I did struggle with that. But we had set it up, and I had the buy-in from my wife, who's been just amazing, completely supportive, and we figured out how to do it.
In terms of, but let me just ask that, in terms of Yeah, I mean, like, we can talk about sort of business marketing plan, but first a financial plan. It sounds like having
Yeah,
and I think that's essential that
yeah.
you have a financial plan. So
Yeah, because I was definitely I decided with school I wasn't going to go half and half. I wasn't going to go part time or whatever. I wasn't interested in that. I need to commit to something. That was a personal decision. It might not be the right thing for everybody, but for me, so although I didn't give my notice in until whenever it was end of January, beginning of February of 2020, I'd been planning for 6, 8 months before that and saving and figuring out what's going to come in and what's going to go out and how we would do that, accepting that I wouldn't have have any money in for a long period of time. Um, and in COVID when it was all up at the place, all over the place as well. So yeah, I did do fiscal planning for that. It was really, really tight, I'm not going to lie. But you find ways of making it work. And I think, again, it comes back to that. We are more resourceful than we ever realize. Even vulnerable clients are more resourceful than they ever realize. And so you've just got to go for it. And I think actually teaching really helped you do that. When teachers are real doers, they have no choice really because of workload and pressures and all the rest of it. But you just kind of get your head down and go, okay, what do I need to do? When do I need to do that by? What's my plan? And you just get practical. Again, talk about the course, me from threat schema into problem solving schema. Do I focus on the threat, worry, and stress, or do I focus on what I actually do? Which in turn reduces the worry and the stress and all the rest.
yeah. It's so powerful making that switch. We could talk about that, but let's come back to that. So you had to plan the costs of not having an income, the expenditure on the training and other things, and then when you're going to start seeing your first clients, what you're going to charge and how many. And I always talk about, and then I think Mark Austin, the business coach, talks about this survive goal, which is basically how much you need to be bringing in to not have any, to be not using your savings anymore. So what does that, and then what does that translate to how many clients and what you're going to charge? And then the numbers up, replacing what you had before, etc. So just talk us through that, how that worked for you, and maybe what did you initially charge per hour, and how long did it take you to get to the survive number? I mean,
Oh, that's really interesting. So
this is a practical stuff here.
I have this conversation with students all the time. What are you going to charge? What's you going to charge? And then we go into why. And I had the same thing. I charged £30 for my first few clients because I just I didn't feel worthy in that respect. I did have the whole imposter thing. I wasn't sure. And I was just like, well, if I can't do it, if I'm rubbish, then at least it's only a little bit of money and blah blah blah. And in hindsight, I really regret that because it's not about that. What's your results? Who are you dealing with? What if I charge £30 for the same result as someone who charges 50 or 80 or 150 or whatever it is? What is that? Is it right that I charge this just because I've got less experience? If I'm getting really good results, and obviously that can take a bit of time because you need a few clients for that to come through. But if I'm getting really good results, what's that then worth to other people? So I charged 30 and then I went up to 40, I think it was. And then over time, up and up and up and up and up and up. And as I got more experienced and more confident in it and more confident in myself, and I did more training and I do other things now as well, and I get the results, I charge a lot more money. And so yeah, that's really important. And to get to, so I had we worked out a clear, what do we need, what do I need to earn money? That's it. What do I need to earn? And that was to pay the mortgage and the bills. And then my wife obviously earns as well. So food and whatever will come out of that. So right early on, I knew what I had to bring in. Which when you were charging £30 an hour was quite daunting at first. So I leaned into a bit of education. I thought, right, so how do I supplement this? What am I good at? I'm good at presenting and blah 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 blah, etc. So I wrote to all the local schools, and I didn't say who I was in terms of my previous life or where I'd been, because I wrote to it was the pastoral leads and said, this is who I am. My background is this. This is what I've just been. I have done. This is what I've trained in. This is what I might be able to do for you. So I did a bit of research in each school, what their Ofsted reports were like, where there were potential sort of, problems, etc., in terms of pastoral and therapy. And I remember really clearly, I wrote it on I sent it on a Friday morning. Within an hour and a half, I got responses from all 4 local schools. I was like, oh, good. I got work from all 4 of them straight away. And one of them I'm still with now. So I do 1 day a week with one of the schools in Bath, where I, as a psychotherapist, with their students. And I started that. I think it was something like the March, April. We began that was because of COVID restrictions and all the rest of it.
But this is all therapy related or sort of
Yeah, all therapy. Yeah.
related work. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did a couple of workshops for some of them and some online learning, all about therapy and cognitive behavioral and around sleep and stress. And then that built nicely. So I did a bit of that. And then in the meantime, I was trying to get clients. So again, I had no idea really how to do it. And it was fortunate, or I marketed myself in a nice way, in that the clients that I got, my first 4 or 5 referred me, and I got my next 4 or 5 from them. And that's how I get a lot of my business now, is through referrals. I haven't actually advertised, like done a, whatever, Google ad or paid ads or anything like that for over 2 years now. I haven't done anything.
How do people, apart from referrals, how do people find you? Through the website?
Yeah, through the website. And I would do posts on Facebook and LinkedIn and that sort of stuff. Or actually LinkedIn now rather than then. But yeah, just trying to raise awareness of me, which is what you have to, to make this work as if you wanted to do just therapy, for example, if you just wanted to do hypnotherapy with clients, you have to work on the marketing. You have to work on presenting yourself a bit outside your comfort zone, maybe, to other people. And I remember one of the things that you said. It was late on in the course. It was if you do 10 hours a week or whatever of therapy, then you need to spend another 30 hours on your marketing. Treat it as a 40-hour a week job, full time. Get on your marketing, get on your media, get on these other things, work it, because it's not just going to come to you. You have to generate awareness of you and what you do and interest. And then, niching for me came way down the line. 18 months after I didn't know what I was going to do niching. I offered pretty much everything on the course. It was only later that I started sleep and stress, and sort of life change, really habit change. That was the last sort of 12 to 18 months really, where I started to do that as my thing. So it takes time. You have to work at the business side as well as the therapy side. That's just the reality of having your own business. And if you can I made some connections with other local therapists as well, which is really, really good. Just through give them a quick email, and just said, "Hi, I'm Barry. This is what I'm doing. I see a few cognitive behavioral therapists. This is what you do. Fancy a coffee, or can I just have 10 minutes of your time to?" And people gave it up. It was lovely, and so I've still got contacts around Bath.
And they referred people to you, or what? How did that benefit you?
So I was able just to go, okay, you're a therapist for the last 20 years, or you're a therapist for the last 5 years. 5 years, how did you set up? What did you do? Where did you get your clients from? If you've been going 20 years, how do you keep going for 20 years? How do you keep a career? And how do you keep your interest in a career for 20 years? Having been through teaching for 20 years, and I couldn't, towards the end of it, I'm done, totally done. What do you do? What training do you do? Where do you do that training? How do you work with clients? What do you do and what do you do to get clients? Is it just purely reputation now? Are you associated with other people? And so you work that, and then I've got referrals from those people, especially actually since I started specializing in niching, as they say in business, niching. I get more referrals for things like sleep and stuff like that, which there are not so many people doing it actually. So that's really, really useful. Networking is a part of running your own business. It's not just about, here's my website, wait for the clients to come to me. It just doesn't work that way.
Network, and don't treat them as competitors, particularly.
No, definitely not. And I refer people to them. Again, I think when I got a bit more confident in myself, again, I became less worried about referring people to other people who just have specialisms in what they are. And that also is, that's really useful when you get clients that come to you with real specific traumas, maybe childhood traumas, abuses, and all the rest of it. Well, that none of that is really my area. And so I've got people now that I trust and I know have helped people in those particular areas. Well, they will know people. So you have a little network that can support people that you might not necessarily be able to help, might not be within your sphere, or there's just someone who is, is much better, would be much better for that client than you would be. And I think we all need to have humility as therapists. We are not ideal for everybody. And we do need to keep within our sphere of competence, because there's plenty of people out there that can help people in very specific areas. So, when it comes to things like those severe traumas from childhood and stuff like that, I'm just not as good as other people. And so I'll always refer to them. And it may actually be that sometimes you work with them on different things. So it might be that, depending upon what it is,
You work with the insomnia and they go whatever, and yeah.
Mostly, yeah, insomnia and clinical depression, whatever it is you want to do, they'll do in the clinic. So it's, yeah, so don't be afraid within that to say, again, I don't know really. I'm really not sure if I'm the right person for you with that. I think it's about, what is in the client's interests, what is in when they come to you, and you there's a difference between feeling that I can help them and being able to help them. And I think we have to have the humility to sometimes say, I'm not necessarily the right person, or the right person at the right time anyway, to help this person. So I wanna get it to someone that will be better suited to them, And actually, you can do a lot of that work. So I do, when I prep for people. So I'll either get referrals, or they'll come through. Sometimes they get referrals from a website. And it'll be, I need help with stress. Okay, well, that can mean a whole load of things, right? Or sleep, maybe a whole load of things. So you'll have a 20-minute Zoom call with them, just to meet them and say, hi, here I am. Get to know them. They can put names to faces, etc., and talk through a little bit about what they're going through, to make sure that before they commit to any time or money with me, and their emotional time as well, their emotional resources. Am I the right person? Can I help them? And that 20-minute Zoom call is just invaluable. I
think also lowers I would say the anxiety, but in terms of, you've got a new client coming in, and it's like, there's a lot of information. You've got to meet them, form a connection, and how's this going to scope out? I don't even know yet. But you've actually dealt with that sort of stuff. You've got a sense of the scope, the lay of the land. You've met them, there's a connection. They come in, you're already jump-started the process in a way that makes that first full session actually able to be much more full.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to. If you look at it from the client's point of view, you might be the very first person they've admitted anything to. You don't know that, obviously, but they might have held something in them for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it may be. And so they have the courage to reach out to you and say, I'm struggling with X, Y, Z. You've just got to put yourself in their shoes and imagine what that takes to finally be able to say that to somebody. And so when you have that Zoom call, which is, or the call before, however you want to do it, which is just more personal, and they can see you're on their side. You can see that you're a nice, empathetic person, that you're not going to sit there and judge them. You just want to find out if you can help them and what that might look like between the two of you. That's just gold. That's just
they do come away already feeling a lot, because they have a sense of hope. This set, I was reflecting on this book. I've been trying to find it. It's gone on my bookshelf somewhere, but you might have seen me pushing it out a little bit, called Persuasion and Healing by Jerome Frank. Put it on your list, Barry, if you haven't. It is one of the...
I'll write it down now.
And I was watching a podcast with Professor Marvin Goldfried, who was one of the early CBT guys, still going, and Alan Francis, who was on the chaired the DSM-4 in America, head psychiatrist basically, and they said this was the most important book they'd read, the two of them.
Oh, wow.
They said this, and he basically says that psychotherapy is essentially the people generally arise demoralized. That's the overall thing. They need help, they can't cope, and that it is a process of remoralization And fundamentally, it's interesting. He compares the client to a kind of as a reading of the client as like an exegetical. In other words, you've got to make an interpretation of something here. Like there are a million interpretations of the Bhagavad Gita, and the client is like that. They're like a text that you're trying to interpret and understand, and that the process is essentially that of rhetoric, noble rhetoric, as
Exactly.
in, and moving them. Essentially, you're infusing them with hope,
Yeah.
possibility, and positive emotion and feeling to do
Yeah.
so.
I mean, just think of it on a basic level. When you talk to your friend about how you're struggling about with something, whatever it may be, when you reach out to someone, how that feels, and when they give you a bit of compassion, or they might even give you a bit of advice, but they give you a compassion and a bit of hope, how that feels on that really basic level, and then you escalate that up to where that feels like it's a lot bigger, whether it is or it isn't, but it feels bigger and it feels more difficult. You're giving that sense of hope. That this therapy, without doing therapy, them just talking to you and saying, this is my situation, without any kind of commitment in terms of that, that I've got to pay you and blah 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 blah. It's just, that's therapy in itself. Just sharing and saying something to someone is therapy. And so yeah, you build that relationship. I think it's like, I like to think of almost like myself as almost like a detective, really. And it's a bit about piecing these things together. What's the information? What are the facts I can gather? What are the feelings I can gather? What are the instances I can gather? When I put that together, what does that look like with the client? When I put that and we discuss it, what does that look? What might that mean? What might be an approach? What might be a way to look into this? What might be a way to get them to reframe or get them to understand more about themselves? And then you add that into, and I do think it's really important, being quiet. And I've talked a lot in this, but being quiet. When you ask questions and you really listen to their answers, not by saying you know the answer, but by then asking more questions and getting them to understand and deepen their knowledge and their understanding of something. That's really important. So I think the temptation with therapy is to think you know everything and to tell them everything. And it's just not. You want to get them to really think, reflect, and come to their own answers and conclusions, preferably, maybe with a bit of guidance, maybe just with curiosity, rather than you having all the answers all the time. Because what you actually think might the answers might not actually be the answers either. But coming with that sense of curiosity, trying to piece all these bits and bobs together. I liked Donald Meichenbaum's his 9-box, what's it, 9-box case conceptualization model, as he calls it, where you're gathering all these instances, everything, what might be the factors that influence this particular person, and he gets really granular, in terms of the age group and the gender and the cultural background and blah 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 blah. What might all this mean? When you get that information and you put it all together with the clients that they understand, that's when you're really, really helping somebody. So very often clients will talk about things thinking this is my problem. But when you do that questioning constantly, well, what does that mean to you? How does that work for you? What do you think, etc. You then realize that the presenting problem is just a presenting problem. It's not actually necessarily the issue you need to deal with. And that, again, when you talk about giving hope, and they've had something which they haven't understood for the last 10 years, and they just don't know why they feel this way about something, and all of a sudden they'll just have a breakthrough. They'll give you an answer and they go, oh my God, I'm doing that. That's why that is. Oh my days. Fantastic. Now it might actually be that's not the ultimate answer to the ultimate question, Douglas Adams 42 and all the rest of it. It might just be a way on there, but it's something that they own, that they have come to realize themselves with your help. It's not you telling them, they own it. And we talk about self-attribution and the client taking the credit for everything being really important, incredibly important. You don't get that by just telling them everything.
So let's put this all together. How did you choose to specialize in insomnia, and how's that working out? And how did you get into it? And then let's have a look at your case study then, with the time we've got left.
It's a really good question, because I've never really been interested in sleep before. I've always been a pretty rubbish sleeper, to be fair. But I was just doing a bit of research and just looking up, and I happened to go into a webinar, which was by a guy called Angus Buckle, who was doing a presentation about sleep and what it meant and all the rest of it. And I was just like, that's really cool. It was really interesting. And I just started researching it and really getting into it, and just doing other trainings. I did the CBHI at the college, the webinar there. And I was like, oh my goodness me, this is so cool. And I studied CBTI. And then you're like realizing just how important sleep is to each and every single one of us. It's at least as important, if not more important, than nutrition, than exercise, than anything stress management, because everything comes from it. If you don't sleep well, your mood is poor, your thinking is poor, your eating can be poor. It's everything comes from sleep. So when you realize, actually, if I get good quality sleep for me, and I understand what that is for me, and I can put the cognitive and the behavioral approaches in, which maximize my chances for me to get better sleep, that is totally transformative for people. And so when I started to look into it and really understand it, and there's some amazing people out there in sleep, but not enough. I started to realize I can have real impact. And it was really linked with stress as well. So stress, I was doing a lot of work around stress, I still do, and anxiety, stress and sleep intimately linked. So it was helping me with that as well, another angle that I hadn't really gone into before. And then those two led me into things like habit change and people changing their lives. I'd gone through that myself in 2020 and 2019, changing careers, but I was now able, and I am now able, to link it in with different therapeutic practices and approaches. And that's kind of how I got into my current specialisms, which is sleep, stress, and habit change, if you like. Current, I do say current because I think, again, I'm only 4 years into this and I'm learning all the time. So I can see, it all changing, and so when my first clients were sleep, again, I did feel imposter syndrome coming back in a big way. And I just followed the protocols that I'd learned, and I was amazed as how a simple behavioral change, simplest of all, pick the same wake up time, whatever that is right for you, whether it's 7 or 6 or 8 or whatever it is, and then everything goes from that. And I did that with a client. I was like, oh my God. He went from like 4 or 5 hours sleep up to like 6, 7 in a week, and I'm like, that's all I've done. And his bad sleeping is been sorted almost. And it was such a simple change. I think with therapy as well, but certainly with sleep, we complicate things. There's so much out there, so much nonsense that's written and advertised on social media and stuff. We complicate things. And essentially, it's really simple. The way we behave has a ginormous impact on what we think. And so if you're talking about whether it's about stress, well, what do you do in a day? How does that contribute to your stress levels? Or what don't you do in a day? How does that contribute to your stress levels? So in my practice, I keep things quite simple. With sleep and stress, I have a much more detailed health questionnaire that I use to really understand a client's lifestyle. And I think that's actually a big change between when I started out and what I've been doing in the last year or so. So I was always a little bit, I think when I started out, I was a little bit, almost didn't want to know too much in a way I felt a bit intrusive, a little bit, kind of not realizing maybe that I'm a therapist and I need to be intrusive. So I developed from the college's questionnaire, the health questionnaire, and from a few other sources, some technical research resources, a questionnaire that gives me all the details that I need to really analyze the person as a whole. So if I'm dealing with stress, I understand what their exercise and what the diet is and what their life looks like on a typical day and all these things. And that has taken what I do with clients to a totally different level. I get really, really good results quite quickly with clients now, just because I understand the factors that are all the factors, well, not all, but most of the factors that are influencing their lives. So you can make so again, what did that teach me? Don't underestimate the power of knowledge about a client. How do you make all these connections? You need to know the things in the first place. So I came to sleep and stress in that way, and then I did my master's in psychology. I did my dissertation on the relationship between sleep quality, reported levels of stress, and work performance. Um, um, because there's a lot of stuff between sleep and stress, between stress and work, and between work and sleep, but not a lot between all three of them. In fact, there's practically nothing, as I found out when I did my dissertation. And so that really, again, gave me a much more in-depth insight, a different one as well, to CBTI and CBHI and all the rest of it. And just, yeah, ignited me. So I love it. I talk about sleep a lot. So if you ever go to my LinkedIn, pretty much talk just mostly about sleep and occasionally about my nice new trainers, which I'm very proud of. They're very nice. So that's how I came about that. I became interested in it, as simple as that, and I remain interested in it. So I have clients. So I've got one, I've got a client I'm seeing later today. Actually, I'm seeing later today. So I was looking at his sleep diary, which we got. So in 4 weeks, he's gone from an average of 3 hours sleep to an average of 7, which is nuts, which is literally life-changing for him. So this is
You think that's his estimation appraisal of sleep has changed there in that, or do you think the actual amount of sleep? Because this is
the actual amount. Yeah, the actual amount. So we also use sleep trackers for him. So he's got an Oura ring like I have, which is actually, to be fair, it's good for telling you how much sleep you've got. It's not necessarily good for the sleep stages, the stuff that it advertises. It's not there yet. It's not there yet. But you can use it as a really good indicator of when I'm going to sleep and when I'm getting up, therefore the amount. Then it becomes less subjective. Especially when you cross-reference it with the diary we're doing and the notes and reflections. So I did some really simple stuff with him, which was obviously get the questionnaire again, get the when do you exercise, how do you exercise, what's your stress is like, what's been going on in the last couple of 3 years, do you know, what can you trace this back to anything, this particular, when was it happening, when wasn't happening? And one of the questions I asked him, which he hadn't really thought about, was was really simple. What were you like before? What were you like before, when you could sleep properly, when you could sleep well? It's like, oh my God, I hadn't thought about it like that. Okay, yeah. So let's not just focus on the problem. Let's focus on what you were like when you didn't have the problem. And what did that look like when you didn't have the problem? What was life like then? What's changed? And we did, and we started off with, I did a lot of psychoeducation around sleep and around stress, because he suffers with stress issues as well. Where hypnosis is coming in nice and healthy and handy, sorry. And then we looked at his behaviors first. As I said to him, we're going to go through your behaviors first. That's the first place we look at. And when we looked at it, he was all over the place, although he didn't think it was. So how did we know that? I got him to do a diary before we met. So we'd met, had the Zoom call. Are we appropriate? Yeah, right, here you go. I want you to fill this in for the next, I think it was 8 days. And then we'll look at it. And I looked at all his patterns and I just highlighted, and in the session I gave it to him and I said, what can you see there? Hint, 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 hint. He was like, all right, yeah, my wake time is all over the place. And I was like, yeah, we had like a 4-hour gap between his earliest and his latest sleep. I was like, and there were lots of gaps. So I was like, okay, let's just do that. Let's for the next week, let's just regulate when you get up. And we worked out a time. For him, it was ironically 5 a.m. Because he does a bit of shift work as well. So we worked it around that. And he came back. So when I do things like any kind of thought diary, I do it as a real-time document. So I do it as a Google form, Google Doc, and then I can see through the week.
They're filling it in.
Yeah, so I can see in real time what's going on and get a picture. And it took about a week for that to really improve his numbers. His mood improved massively, self-reported, subjective, etc. His mood improved, but it took about 5, 6, 7 days for his sleep time to come up a little bit, but it did, and we've just done the same thing in terms of that.
It's interesting. I mean, because you're for the last 15 minutes, you've talked very behaviorally, not much about cognition, and about really understanding the client's behavior schedule and proposing changes in that. And that proposed change, when we do insomnia work, there is an aspect of adherence to the treatment plan. And this idea that things might get worse, feel a bit worse before they get better. Talk us through that. How do you get the client to adhere to the treatment plan? Because that's the challenge, perhaps, particularly with behavioral, right?
It's all about psychoeducation and why we're doing this. And it's the same with any treatment plan for anything, right? If I can tell the client the reasons why we're doing it, if I can link it to research even better, which is what I do, then people are 99% of them are inclined to go, okay, let's give this a go. And if they don't, the question is, well, why are you here? Is a pretty pertinent one, I would suggest. If you don't want to change, if you don't want to do anything to change, what's the point? We can discuss and we can talk it through and all the rest of it, but ultimately you've got to do something. Change isn't going to happen magically just by being here and seeing me. Got to do something. So I think when you are really clear with clients about why you're doing this, and you have the evidence behind that, people are inclined just to go, okay, let's try this. And with sleep, it's in terms of CPTI, it's quite easily delineated, really. I mean, you have complications, comorbidities, and you have differences in gender and age and background and all the rest of it. Of course you do, but essentially there are, like with anything, there are some things that we can all do that will improve the picture almost no matter what. So with stress, if you do breath work for 5 minutes a day, you are going to very gradually get hold of your stress a bit better, no matter who you are. Okay. And like with sleep, if you have certain behavioral things, especially around getting up and getting light and getting some light exercise and stuff like that, then we're all going to improve. To the extent we don't know yet until you do it, but that's why I like as well starting with behavior change around sleep and with stress as well, is because they're quite easy for a person to get hold of. Cognitive exercises can seem a bit in the air, a bit woolly for some people and a bit difficult to get hold of. Whereas a behavior thing that you do is really solid and it's there. And when you record, especially in terms of sleep, so I do a recording of their mood and their sort of clarity of mind within the first 10 minutes of waking up. So you're doing SEDs, subjective units, etc. But when you record those over time and they can see that actually that they're saying to themselves that on that morning, this better, this is a 4, this is a 5, this is a 6, this is a 7, then because of the behavior, then they start to believe that they can do this. They start to believe they can do this. I can feel this getting better. I can do this. And so I think, behavior change is just a little bit easier for most clients, not every, but most clients to get hold of initially to see actual change. And then you can work on cognition. And with this particular chap, he was at the point where he was actually not looking forward to going to bed because he would spend hours in bed and just get really frustrated. So he did which week would it have been? Week 3. Week 3, I did a cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy script where he just welcomed it. And it was as simple as that. So we ran through what he was doing and all the rest of it. We ran through what his evening looked like, what his bedtime rituals were, blah blah blah. And we did some work around that, and then we just did a really simple script with an induction, imaginal work. What would this look like? What would this feel like when you welcome it? When you like to go to bed? When you see your bed as a place of comfort, not as a place of dread? And again, that was a real change. I gave him a recording for that to practice in between sessions. I think it was week 3, week 4. I forget which one now. Again, it was like da-da. So you're marrying that behavioral change with this is okay.
Well, an emotional, in terms of the emotion they feel, because they start to, one client for insomnia, and he says, just as I'm thinking about going to bed now, I'm starting to sweat, my heart rate's going up. I can go, well, I think we need to change that.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Why on earth would you not welcome sleep, something which is incredibly restorative and lovely and gorgeous?
I mean, let's just talk about those two aspects. One, getting behavior change in, and two, getting this emotional kind of change in a way, kind of the association with what's the bed associated with kind of the meaning of it as well, but particularly emotional, the affective response. the use of hypnosis there to both rehearse behavior change,
Yeah.
but also to the repetition of the what Salter calls present the stimulus, change the response around the bed. So the bed's associated with pleasant. Do you use that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a place. Yeah, I mean, you think about it, right? If someone goes to bed and they can't get to sleep for 3 hours, that doesn't become a lovely association. That becomes that, especially if they're just tossing and turning, and and thinking. Rumination starts a big thing when you start to stay in bed for a long period of time, can't get to sleep, you ruminate, things become bigger and worse, etc. So you're trying to change that and alleviate that. So you marry that with behavior change. If after 20 minutes you are doing that, get up, and we figure out what we do, whether you go and read a book or whether you go and listen to a gentle podcast that doesn't make you think and doesn't remind you of the day, by the way. Whether you just go and have a cup of water or something and have a break, or just get a bit of fresh air, whatever it may be. Okay. Whatever works for them. But so when you do that and you take that physical behavioral frustration away a little bit, and you marry that with a change of cognition. I welcome bedtime. I'm looking forward to going to bed and being restored. I'm looking forward to waking up in the morning feeling a bit more refreshed and ready for the day and all the rest of it. And you change that association. You change it because you can choose to do that. You can choose to have that association of, I love my bed, I love bedtime, I look forward to bedtime. It's a good thing for me. When you change that association, everything changes for a client. So you can have years, and I've got people who've had like 20 years of insomnia that we can sort in 6 to 8 weeks generally, and get into a much better state. And when I say sort, it's not like every day is perfect. It's like, oh my God, I get 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day or whatever it is every single day. No, that's complete nonsense. And you change that. That's part of it, changing the expectation. Nobody, including me, who has really good sleep, has perfect sleep. I have plenty of nights where I'm not quite as rested, or I don't get to sleep quite as easily, whatever it may be. But they are 1 or 2 a week, maybe. As opposed to, if I'm getting right 5 times a week, I am more than happy. I have kids as well, and sometimes they'll wake up and blah, 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 blah. So things like with insomnia and sleep and stuff, it's changing the expectation of everybody gets a really good night's sleep apart from me. And I've got to get great sleep every single night. Or if I've got a meeting, I've got to have perfect sleep that night for the meeting in the morning and all the rest of it. You just start to that's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. The body, the brain has an amazing way of helping you catch up sleep, helping you get good sleep if you've had a bad night previously. So if you've got, I had this thing, was it last year? It was 2 years ago. It's 2 summers ago. So my boy has real problems with hay fever, and has been hospitalized a couple of times for it. So we had it was 2 years ago, summer 2 years ago. And so no, it was last year. It was last year. Sorry. And he couldn't sleep. His eyes were swelling up. It was 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday night. So I was like, right, took him to A&E at 12. And then we left A&E at 9 in the morning. Right, brilliant. So the temptation was to go, right, let's go and sleep for 8 hours, blah, blah, blah. And I said to him, no, what we'll do is I'll get 3 hours just so I can operate during the day. I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to drive on 3 hours, but I'm just going to get it so I can get some stuff done. If you get about 4, because he needs a bit more sleep, and then we'll just go to bed as normal tonight, which is the Monday night. And we did that, and a couple of nights just got normal sleep, and our sleep stabilized. So when I looked at the Oura ring, which again, I kind of a little bit with this because it's not the 100% accurate, but it kind of gives you a nice thing. And what we know from the theory around sleep is that if you miss sleep one night and you get your normal sleep the next night, you just spend a slightly different time in each of the sleep stages. So you'll spend a bit more on REM if you need more REM. Your body will sort this out. A bit more deep if you need more deep. And over the next couple of nights, it will just adjust your time in those stages. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing. You don't need to go and get 16 hours sleep the next night to make up for the bit you had lost before. It doesn't work like that. So if you just trust your body, and so if you don't get a great night's sleep one night, and the next night you just go to bed as you normally would, because you'll be more tired, your sleep drive is still building, you're still a human being, you still need sleep, etc. It will then just adjust. And so you don't need to get, if I get 5 hours one night, I don't need to get 9 or 10 hours the next night. I'll just get my normal 7 or 8 or whatever it is that you work out together. and it will be fine. You do that in the next couple of nights, you'll be right as rain. So again, psychoeducation around that with clients with insomnia as well, again, lessening the anxiety and around I haven't slept particularly well, or I've only got 5 hours or 4 hours or whatever it may be, and just going, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. You're a human being.
And then you might wake up in the night. I mean, this
Yeah, you might wake up.
stuff can take care of a lot when it's done. When it's done well. What do you think? There is this aspect about, and in the workshop that we deliver, the idea that a lot of people with insomnia don't actually suffer from that much sleep deficit, but they have a perceived sleep deficit and they worry about it and they get hyper focused on sensations of fatigue. They've got a misappraisal of their sleep and of their performance during the day, and they have a struggle. This is my particular model I'm into. They struggle with tiredness, and rather than enjoying tiredness, they struggle with it because it comes on when they don't want it, and so they feel fatigued. Then we get into bed, they can't let go and enjoy feeling tired. Just reflect on some of those things, because obviously this guy that's only had 3 hours, I did question that whether that was a sleep misperception, which we know happens, and everybody probably underestimates how much they sleep generally, even good sleepers. But speak to me about that aspect of sleep misperception and the sense of not being able to cope because I haven't, and etc.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. So the perception is important. That's why the evidence is important, when you can gather it as objectively as you possibly can. So whether that's about talking about, I'm stressed and I keep thinking about X, Y, Z, well, when you do the thing, you find that sometimes you find that it's not about that, it's about something different or whatever. And it's the same with sleep. Perception sleep, like we have this the 8 hour myth, as they call it, was we've all got to get 8 hours sleep or it's not a good night. Okay, right. That's just complete nonsense. So, and I mean complete and utter nonsense. So when you look at, we all need different time to sleep, a different amount of sleep. So I did, when I first started learning about sleep, I practiced on myself, funnily enough. I'd gone thinking I need 8.5 hours sleep every night, and when I did it, and I tracked my sleep over time, and I did a lovely thing on a holiday whereby. It's a really good way of doing it, actually. So when you go on holiday, you have your 3 or 4 days to recover from your job. Don't drink any alcohol on the next 3 or 4 nights. Go to bed when you feel sleepy. Get up when you wake up. See what that sleep window is like, and that's probably about where you need to be, give or take. And I did a thing where I went from 8.5 hours down to 7 hours sleep a night, and felt so much better, and was performing better, getting more done, and I felt better. And I'd gone through the myth of I need a certain amount of sleep, but actually my body doesn't need that. And as you get older, it changes anyway. As you're younger, it changes anyway. So it was that whole perception of what I needed was wrong, and the evidence through doing was right. And you're right. So people say they've had a bad night's sleep, and actually it may not be true. What is a bad night's sleep? If I asked that to 10 different people, and I'd probably have 10 different answers about what that meant. I only got 5 hours. I woke up in the middle of the night. I tossed and turned for 20 minutes. I tossed and turned for an hour. And so actually challenging that, what does that mean to you? When you tell me you've got bad sleep, what does that mean? There's a difference between our sleep quality and our sleep quantity. So quality is much more important. So I would much rather a client have 6 good hours sleep than 8 or 9 average hours sleep or poor hours sleep, because the quality is where you're going to get the real benefits. Quantity is overrated. Yes, you may be much better off with 7.5, 8 hours sleep, whatever, but if you don't get that, you're going to be fine. And the next night, if that's what your body needs, and you're not doing things like drinking and stuff like that, which obviously changes how quickly you get to sleep and if you wake up or not and all the rest of it, your body will compensate and change for that as you go through. So when you say you have bad sleep, like with anything, what does that actually really mean? What does that mean? Not just in terms of the sleep, but then, okay, what's your mood the next day? How much do you get done the next day? Do you feel sleepy the next day? What's your mood like the next day? Do you nap or do you not nap? Or do you exercise or not exercise? All these things feed into your sleep, and And when you have that kind of information, you can start to work with a client, whether it's behaviorally, cognitively, or both, which is really where you want to be. So you're right. Perception is about asking those questions. It's about getting the evidence to support or not support that, and then you can really go to work on it.
And what about this aspect of these misappraisals, attentional, selective attention onto fatigue, sensations, and also not being able to enjoy feeling tired? You know, we know from research people with insomnia actually have trouble often napping during the day. They can't sort of, you know, as opposed to somebody with sleep apnea who's just going to go off straight off, you know. So this struggle with natural feelings, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, it comes from a variety of places, doesn't it? One of them being we're a 24-hour society. So we are, you know, although our bodies are designed to sleep, you know, overnight, we are diurnal creatures. Our society is set up to go from before the sun is up to way after the sun is up, when you should be winding down and stopping and all the rest of it. So we're teaching people not to welcome sleepiness, because, you know, we have this culture we have for a long time of the longer you work, the harder you work, the more valuable you are, or the better you are, or whatever. And it's complete and utter nonsense. And we do feed into that. We do buy into that as a human race. You know, I do. When you talk, it's very interesting when you talk to people with insomnia about naps. I've done this with a few clients who've been terrified of having a nap. And I've said, it's fine. If you have a short 10, 15, 20-minute nap and you feel fine afterwards and it doesn't interfere with your sleep that night, fine. What are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we get them to that point where they can do it. I take naps all the time. I do naps probably 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, I'm lucky. I work from home, so I can do little bits like that. But actually, it's a refreshing thing. So I know that I work better in the afternoon when I have a little 10-minute nap, or I might do something called a bit of yoga nidra, something like that, where I'm just sat and closing my eyes, focusing on different parts of the body and relaxing them. It's also known as an NSDR. I think there's a non-sleep deep rest. We do a quick exercise, which you can do at work or wherever you are, where you just relax and it just makes you feel refreshed. So I can recognize that I'm feeling a bit sleepy or not quite with it, cognitively or performance-wise, whatever. I can do something about it very, very quickly and be refreshed, and then I can still sleep in the evening and have my lovely evening sleep. It's okay to switch off. It's okay to switch off. You know, again, we talk loads of behavioral stuff. How do you get better sleep in the evening? Well, I think I should go out to a rave and have lights flashing in my eyes and be drinking. No. Right. What are you going to try and do to prepare your body for sleep? What does your body want to do? Well, it doesn't want to be stimulated, which it doesn't want to be reminded of the day. It doesn't want to be stressed, you know, having arguments, for example, in the evening, huge cause of insomnia. If you're having an argument with your kids or your partner or whatever, that's certainly not going to help you sleep. So I've done that with clients for sleep as well. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's go through why those arguments are occurring with those people. What can we do about that? How can we feed that in? So, you know, we have a cultural, in the West, certainly, a cultural expectation that we are always on the go, and that is in some way the best option, whereas our bodies are telling us something totally different, and our brains are. And so we have to listen to that. We have to get people to recognize that, and also recognize that, you know, if I go to bed at 12 o'clock at night and I get up at 7 or 8, that is fine. I don't have to go to bed at 10 o'clock and get up at 5 or 6 or whatever, just because of work and blah, 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 blah. If I'm a later, you know, if my body clock is telling me to go to bed late and get up later, that's fine. Can I work my way around that? Can I do that? I mean, in some roles that's easier than others, etc., but it's certainly possible. And with children, the one thing I could get across to blooming adults about kids and their sleep is that they're night owls. 70-80% of them are night owls. That's what their body is telling them to do. They want to go to bed later. They want to get up later. getting up ridiculously early for school is incredibly hard for most kids. It's not because they're being lazy or a pain or they're being awkward or they just want to, annoy you. It's because that's what their bodies are telling them to do. Now we can train them a little bit out of that, but they're always going to want to have that as a default, and it doesn't, not until their early 20s that then either sets as a night owl or sets as a morning lark or somewhere in between, a variation of those. So it's okay. So, I've dealt with clients who can't sleep because their kids can't sleep. Or won't go to sleep early. And so you just, okay, so what's the answer to those sorts of things? Well, you adapt, you change, you don't, just because you've always gone to bed at 9 o'clock when they were, I don't know, from 2 till age 10 or whatever, doesn't mean to say that that's still going to be the same case when they're 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 or whatever. So how do you change that? Becoming flexible thinking around those sorts of hours. How can you get your hours in and the quality hours in as your lifestyle changes, as your children changes, your relationships changes, your job changes. So it's okay to be flexible with all of these things. That we do have absolutist tendencies around lots of things, and it's got to be this way.
Forcing everybody into the same sort of boxes. So if you were Keir Starmer, and there's a little resemblance, no, it's not. If you were, you would want to change the school when the school hours, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as it could be, but if you look at the research and the data and when do students?
What school changed that? Didn't they run a big test on that? They changed it to 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. I think particularly for teenagers, because they particularly have it, and their academic performance was much better.
100%. You look at all the data, it's unequivocal, and so. Again, as a society, we would have to question, what's the best thing for us? We've gone through, interesting, isn't it? We've gone through a 9 to 5 culture where everyone is at work, generally 9 to 5, but actually home working and flexibility in the last 2-3 years are really changing everything. So maybe there's another conversation to be had around, okay, what do we do? What's best for our children? What is best for our children? And it's hard, it does help knowing about these things. Getting your kids to sleep and my children's sleep, I'm very glad to say, is very good now. It wasn't always the case when I wasn't doing the right things. It's very interesting. Again, the habits for children work largely work with the same way as they do for adults. Slight differences in some areas and stuff, but you give a kid a constant wake time and you avoid the stimulation in the evening and you help them deal with their stresses. And you get them up at the same time every day or thereabouts roughly, these are going to go a long way to helping your child get the right amount of sleep and prioritizing sleep. Again, I deal with a lot of teenagers who it's quite scary. Sometimes they're up on social media till 2-3 in the morning and getting up at 6:37. You're just like, what are you doing? No wonder their behavior at school is appalling. No wonder they're not doing any work. No wonder they skip school. And it's and actually sometimes they're aware. Sometimes the kids that do that are like, I know this is bad for me, and sometimes they are completely unaware because they've not had the education around it. So another thing I would definitely put in schools is knowledge around things like sleep and stress and all the rest of it. Where is that in the
energy and mood during the day, and then they're anxious, stressed, depressed.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the students that are stressed or like say depressed or whatever, what part of that is our culture in terms of sleep? What part of that is I get 6 hours of sleep a night when actually teenagers need closer to 9, 8 to 9, 9 to 10 even sometimes. If a child's not getting that, that's going to affect absolutely everything. And so again, but that's also where behavior change with both things like stress and sleep is amazingly effective for students because they do like that. This is my kind of deadline. I do a lot of stuff around social media and I do it myself. So my phone goes at 7 o'clock, no social media, no websites or anything like that. I do it myself, right? So, be the example and all the rest of it. Do that with students. Okay, pick a time. pick a time when that could reasonably come off. And we always start way too high, but it's then picking your time. So it's progress, and you start with that and you bring it down and stuff like that. It works. We just need to be consistent with it as adults and reinforce that with students in a way that they know it's not being done to them, but it's being done with them, and why it's being done, explaining to students like you would to adults why this is a good thing, rather than just trying to impose, you've got to do this and blah, 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 blah. Doesn't work.
Fascinating. All right, so I'm looking at the time here.
Oof.
We've gone off a little bit. There's a couple of questions here, and then I want to get your final tips here. Sam says, can we get a copy of the manual to look through before we join? Sam, it's kind of fairly sort of deep proprietary content. Is there a lot? If you really want to know more, I think one thing you can do is you can book an observation day if you're very keen, and come in and you can see some of the course, you'll see the materials. So those you're really keen, you get a real sense then of how the course is taught, see the things we learn. Magdalena says, how long does it take to you to prepare for a new client? Do you have to write personal guided meditation hypnosis for each session?
So where are we? So no, right, personal guided. No, how to prepare for a new client? Well, I get most of that information before I see the client in any kind of paid therapy. So as I said before, I will get a Zoom call done. I'll then have a questionnaire that I'll ask them to write, so I have loads of information, and then I'll obviously go through that before the session. So I will have a very good understanding. Do I have to write personal guided meditation hypnosis for each session? No. There will be sessions where I don't do hypnosis, depending on the needs of the client and where we are with things. There might be focused on behavior, it might be focused on breath work and stuff, or anything. It could be things. So no, I do. So when I do, I tried to record when I did hypnosis in the session with client, on Zoom, blah, 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 with their permission, etc. So they're fully aware, but I didn't really like the quality of it and stuff. So I will do if I do hypnosis with the client, or when I do hypnosis with the client, I will do the script, and then I will learn from the way I've done that script, because it will always be different from what's, on a script. It's personalized with their language, etc. And I will re-record it afterwards. It will, it depends upon obviously how long, but I can do them very quickly now. So if it's a 10-minute exercise that I've done with them, or script, then it will take me probably 12-13 minutes to do, once I've figured it. And then that's the way I prefer to work. So I do use some standard recordings. I have them just in case. I have a standard, like Leaves, I have a standard one, and a couple of others. But I personally like to give them something that is unique to them. It's more effective.
Do you prepare that beforehand? Is that something you improvise and go with your gut spontaneously during the hypnosis session? And if you do prepare it beforehand, are you somewhat of a careful speechwriter and spend some time laboring over the metaphors, or is it fairly simple?
So the way I work is, at the end of every session, let's say the first session, I've done the assessment and we've discussed the approach we might need to take, etc. I then go away, I write my notes on that, what might be the potential area for this, what's the potential treatment plan, and then within that I will pick out 2 or 3 scripts or approaches that I will need to go away and look at and think about, and I will then bring them with those 2 or 3 with me to the next session. And the odds are 90% of the time I do one of those 3 things that I've prepared, depending upon what comes out of that session, the initial. So, client review, the very first thing we do, how are you doing? How's the week gone? Go through any homework that we've set, whether it's a thought diary or whatever, blah, 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 and then go through with them in real time, what's been going on, etc., and then decide from that what approach I'd like to take, but discuss that with them. This is what I think we should do. So we'll always have something pre-prepared for the sessions that way. I won't spend hours rewriting them. Don't have the time, but I will think about the language that I use beforehand, and if I do need to use different metaphor or whatever, things like leaves. I sometimes don't use leaves. Sometimes if they're walking, I use clouds. There's clouds on the hill, lovely clouds on the hill, sat on the hill and the clouds are coming, blah, 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 lovely jubbly. I've even used one, believe it or not, for motorbikes for someone who was really into all that stuff. So I used it motorbikes on the motorway, which is a bit bizarre. Sounds a bit like as unrelaxing as you could possibly be. but they loved it. It worked really, really, really well. So I'll think about that, but I won't spend hours and hours and hours doing
No
that.
improvising when you're going with
Sometimes,
your gut. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes. So again, depends what comes out of the speech with them. If they've suddenly chucked something in a discussion before we do an exercise, then I may well pop that in. And be reactive in that time. React to what's going on in real time. I like to keep it flexible, but I think at a point, because I've been doing it for a while now, and I've seen lots of clients and done it lots of times, you become more confident with that anyway. And when you've done it, you've done the same script a dozen times or a variation of that, you become much more adept at adapting it in real time if you need to, or even in between sessions. So I don't have to think about it for quite as long as I used to. I think it's probably a good way of putting it. I still have to think about it. I still do my prep.
Intuition and going with your gut.
Sometimes, but less. Sometimes, but less. In truth,
Intuition's an interesting aspect in therapy, I think.
it is. I like to be prepped for it. I like to be prepped for it. Sometimes I'll experiment with stuff in real time with them, but most of the time I've got a good idea of probably where it's going to go. And I'll use one of the approaches that I've kind of earmarked for that and see how that goes. And then get the feedback. Again, if you do the Mike and Baum course as well, he talks about getting the feedback at the end of the session, which thankfully I've been doing all the time. What worked for you? How did that work for you? What was the delivery like, etc., etc. So you get some, and then feedback for the next session. When you do my write-up, do I need to change my approach? Is there anything that might work better for this client because of the feedback they said they didn't? Maybe my delivery's too much, too quick, too slow, too whatever. Okay, so I need to change that approach, and I'll just note that and have that for next time and do that.
I had some feedback. I didn't sound enough like Paul McKenna was one. He makes it much more exciting. He personally had Paul McKenna, was a very wealthy client. It was
All right, okay.
Not about entertainment.
It's not about entertainment. Yeah. I think Paul McKenna's an interesting person.
So Louise asks, what exercises do you use to best effect to help your clients change their routines, Barry?
I wish there was one thing I did with them in terms of routines. I think I break it down into different areas: social, relationship, emotional, those sorts of things, and I get a bit of a feel for what they do on a daily basis over a couple of 2 or 3 weeks. So I get a pretty good feel of what typical weeks are like. You can't, it's difficult to go much more granular than that at the beginning of a session. Beginning of sessions, and we break it down and just go, okay, what are the areas that we need to? What are the obvious things that we can do in order to make some changes? What's the low-hanging fruit, especially at the beginning? Let's make some nice, simple changes which are doable, achievable, and will have an impact in a certain area, or maybe even areas, but certain area. And we just go from there. So, just really, really, really obvious things. If they are not doing any breath work, for example, and they are really stressed, I might introduce that. Or if they are not exercising, oh my gosh, then we might introduce that. Or if they're not eating well, we might introduce something around that of just, and I'm not nutritious, not you need to do this or this, but we'll say, okay, you clearly need to eat less processed food and more veg. Okay, let's do stuff like that. And you introduce stuff slowly with habit change, but you make it really important that you make it attainable, and you look at it for long term. I'm not interested in short term results because that's not sustainable. Anyone can, it's that whole diet thing. Why don't diets work? Because you can lose loads of weight in 6 weeks and you can't sustain it because it's an impossible target, etc. I look at it as long term, and I get my clients to look at this as long term change as well. This is not for the next 2 or 3 weeks. This is for the next 3 months, 6 months, year, whatever, looking at the goals that they have and what they want to do. But I just break everything down, low-hanging fruit first. What's going to make some progress in some areas? Build self-efficacy, build hope, build some good habits, build this idea that they can make a difference, they can change, and they can change significantly, sometimes with very small changes. And so yeah, that's the way I would approach habit change generally. But it's a huge area. It's much more complicated than that. But essentially, yeah.
And then we've got a question here from Martin. It says, how much online work do you do now in terms of online?
Oh, right, yeah. My split, what is it? Probably about 60% online, 40% in person, give or take. I thought when I started out that I would just be 100% in person. Thought I'd have my offices in town and everyone come there. Da, 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 da. Reality is that the world has changed a lot. So I've got rooms in town which I use with my clients, and then online. Yeah, about 60-40-ish, something like that. It might vary 70-30, or it might even reverse at times, but around about that.
Okay, well, fantastic. And that's, I think, most of the questions we've covered here. So, and that, by the way, is Sam Hollier who's been asking. He's your cousin. He's been asking.
Hello, Sam. How random. How random.
So any final tips for people who are thinking of training or just trained or just setting up?
Do it. Have all the doubts. Allow yourself to think it won't work, and then challenge it and do it. It only changes when you do things. It only changes when you do things. Realize that everybody, and I don't care what media you read or training courses, that everybody has doubts. Everybody thinks that things aren't going to work, etc. And so you can allow yourself to be dragged in by that and go, yeah, and accept that, or you can allow yourself to challenge that and make that part of who you are, challenging things, not accepting things, you know. I still get imposter syndrome today. Who am I to be doing this? You know, there's other people who've been in the industry longer than I have, achieved blah 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 blah. So what? So what? I love so what. I love so. I've said that so many times, Matt. But it is that kind of like so what. So,
Those thoughts and feelings come up, but you set them aside and get on with the business of being with the client.
Work through them, and then
that might come up, but you set it aside and focus.
Yeah, exactly. And then get into that habit of doing stuff. Your website will get done. Your business will get advertised. Your skills will improve. Your confidence will improve. Your niche will become apparent to you. Your interests will develop. That's all cool. But if you don't do it, it comes back to what we said right at the beginning. Learning for learning's sake is fine, right? I'm not going to criticize anyone for doing that. But when you take one or two things out of everything you see or read or whatever, and put that into practice, that is that is a multitude better.
I think that's coming back to the first thing we discussed, was which is your self-practice routine that you developed quite early on during the course, and using that as like your springboard for the change, literally giving you that spring to make that change. I think that's, hypnotize yourself to be a hypnotherapist. That's what I always say. We've got the script on that,
Why not? Why not? Yes, Strauss, Strategic Self-Hypnosis, was a really good book as well. I read that quite. I think it was. I think it might have been the first thing I read actually after the manual.
Lovely written book, isn't it?
Really, really good. Really, really, really good. And you pick up loads of stuff there. But yeah, just do it. Just be curious. Don't put the pressure on yourself. Be curious. Have fun with it. My God, have fun with it. Life is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And go for it.
Somebody actually, he says, you're not getting out of this alive, Mark. Have more fun. It's really. Oliver Thomas says, would you do level 5 directly and not do level 4 first? Do level 5 directly.
Yeah, I would say, why would you not?
Our questions always used to be level 5, and then we created a slightly simpler version of level 4 ones, and they were always level 5. So just do them.
Yeah, I also like with the level 5 the fact that you have more case studies, because I think that's really important practice before you go in. So you do 20 rather than 8. I think the more having them, the more you practice, the easier it becomes, and therefore you'll feel better about it as well.
You don't have to specialize at the beginning. You can specialize. Both versions of that there. I think I think see what you love, right? See what you
It's
want.
fine to blindly fumble in the dark sometimes with this and just figure it out as you go through. It's okay. It took me, I think it was 18 months ago. So what we're talking about, January 2023, when I really started to think I need to niche in sleep. I need to niche in stress. That's really what I'm loving and good at. Da 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 da. Before then, I had something like 16 or 18 things on my website, something like that. I've got 3 now. That's it.
Well, I made this joke. This guy, somebody said, "Oh, websites don't work on a hypnotherapy forum." I looked at his website, and he said, "Me and Mike, they run a hypnotherapy clinic. We specialize in." They had a set of bullet points, single column, let's say, And I always run a competition to see if anyone can guess how many things they specialized in. Have a go, Barry.
I'll go with more than I did. I'll go 20.
108.
108.
Yeah, and this is now and also arranged as a single column of bullet points on the website.
That's a hell of a clever person. 108 specialisms. My gosh.
Then I focus on this 108 different things. I think that's actually not what specialism is. So okay, book recommendation, top book recommendation before we go.
I'm going to say start out with Strategic Self-Hypnosis by
Strategic Self-Hypnosis. There we go, everybody.
It's so accessible. Just
read it and do it, right? Don't just read it.
And practice it.
Yeah.
Do it. Oh, yeah. 100%. And that's what it gives you, the scripts and blah, blah, blah. It's great.
Make recordings, listen to them, make some notes. Yeah. Okay, Barry, that's been great. I want to talk to you more about insomnia. We'll have to do something just on insomnia because I think we could dive into that a lot more.
Yeah. That would be good. That would be good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for your attention and questions. I hope you found that interesting, helpful, inspiring, exciting, and remoralizing, filling you with hope.
Yeah, hope.
Persuasion and Healing. Have a look at that book, Barry. You're going to love it. It's the level of, yeah.
It's on my list. It's on my list.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
No problem. Speak to you all guys soon. Cheers.